All right. Welcome back for this week's draw along with me, and welcome to my studio. I would like to welcome back everybody who's joined me through the first couple of weeks here. And to anybody who's just joining today for the first time, welcome as well. I'll say the same thing that I always do, which is that my studio sits adjacent to the train tracks. So you might occasionally hear a bit of a rumble from outside, but hopefully that won't be too loud for y'all. I would also like to thank Hannah for doing the acknowledgement, and I would like to share in that and thanking and sharing my respect for First Peoples everywhere and for elders past, present, and future. All right, now this morning we are going to get on to a very different kind of workshop than we've done the last couple of weeks. We are going to be talking about mirrors, and mirrors are very strange objects in the history of art and in artist studios. They're fairly ubiquitous. You find mirrors everywhere, and yet they are very misunderstood objects. And so we're going to be talking about those, and we're going to be using your mirrors, and we're going to be exploring a little self-portraiture today too. So hopefully everybody has a mirror handy, whether it's a handheld mirror or just a mirror that's hanging up somewhere that you have access to. We are also going to be talking about a really, really nice work from the Queensland Art Gallery collection. And I have to also say I'm very excited that Queensland Art Gallery is reopening on Monday, the 22nd of June. And so it'll be wonderful to see our institutions like the Queensland Art Gallery reopening so we can get out there again and see each other in the museums and see works. Okay, so we are going to start with a little discussion about the mirror, and then we're going to get right into doing some drawings. So I want to show you a few images, and then I want to key in on the main image that we're going to use today for this workshop, which is a work from the Queensland Art Gallery collection. And I know that the qagoma team has shared all of those links with you so that you can get those images, but I'll also be pulling up those images on my other camera so you can see them. So here we go again. And again, my name's Bill. Feel free to contribute to the chat. It's a bit hard for me to keep up with the chat as I'm going through the workshop, but I can see it there on the side. And thank you to everybody for saying hello and telling us where you're from. And I should just do a brief introduction to myself too. I am, in addition to doing these workshops, I am a lecturer at the Queensland College of Art at Griffith University. And you're going to be hearing more about that in the workshop today because the work that we're going to be looking at has a very specific connection to the school where I teach. And over there at QCA, I run the drawing programs. And what we'll actually be doing today is something that I've extracted from one of our second year drawing classes. But don't worry, if you don't have any experience drawing at all, if you're just dropping in for the first time, if you have your kids with you, whatever it is, you'll get something out of this workshop today, I promise. Okay, so we're going to switch over here to the second camera, and I want to show you a couple of works and talk a little bit about the mirror, and we'll get into it and hopefully pique your interest around the mirror. So we're going to switch over here, and hopefully you can see my drawing board now. And I also have my tablet set up here. And the very first image that you'll see here on my tablet is this work by Brett Whiteley. And now most of you would be familiar with Brett Whiteley's paintings and his work. This is from a series, it's actually a sketch for a mirror painting, and it's a series that he did of these bathroom paintings, and it contains this mirror in it. And one of the interesting things about mirrors is the way that the mirrors will distort reality at the same time that they reflect reality. If I switch forward from this particular work to, I'm actually not going to go to Lambert, I'm going to go to this work, print, Utamaro work of a woman looking in a mirror from a series of works of women making up in the mirror. You see what we think of as very typical of a mirror reflection. So you see the person on the right-hand side here, you see the frame of the mirror, the reflective surface, and then the reflection. All mirror images like this, though, are a bit of they're a bit strange. They're a bit of a feint, because if you're looking at a work like this and you are seeing the reflection in the mirror would have to be tilted in such a way that you could see the reflection of the person. If that were the case, the person who's looking into the mirror would not see her own reflection. If the mirror were tilted so you could see her reflection and she were looking into the mirror, of course, what she would be able to see is you looking at her in the mirror. So all of these art historical images of people regarding themselves in mirrors are a bit of a, it's theater. It's a bit of a counterfeit. It's a way that artists have manipulated the mirror reflection in order to communicate this idea of gazing at oneself. But that's only one of the very strange things about the history of mirrors in art. The work that we're going to be looking at today is this particular, oops, that's from last week. Let's see if I can pinch there. There we go. This particular work by L.J. Harvey called The Honesty Mirror. And I'm going to leave this up on my tablet. I'm going to come back to talk about L.J. Harvey again in just a minute. But before I do that, I'm going to switch back to my other camera and just chat with you a little bit further about mirrors. Okay, so one of the great misperceptions of mirrors is that they flip things, right? That they reverse things. And that, of course, is somewhat true, but not in the way that people think that it's true. Most people think when they look into a mirror image that it flips things left to right. And one of the great examples of this is writing, mirror writing. So if you look at a text and you turn that text around and you face it into a mirror, you'll see that that text in the mirror looks backwards. And that's a very easy thing that you can demonstrate for yourself at home with your own mirror right now. The strange thing about that, though, is it's not exactly true, and it's not what mirrors do. Mirrors don't flip things from left to right. And an easy way to describe that experience is to take your mirror, look at yourself in your mirror, and point to something over on that side of the room. You know, point to something that's to your right-hand side. And you will see that the you in the mirror is pointing at exactly the same thing that you are pointing at, right? The you in the mirror doesn't flip around and point to the other side of the room, right? Mirrors don't actually flip things left to right that way. And another good way to describe this is by using a piece of tracing paper. All right, so what I have here is a slightly transparent piece of tracing paper. And I'm going to take my piece of tracing paper and I'm going to take a marker here and I'm going to write the word draw on my piece of tracing paper. And I'll show y'all. Okay, there we go. Draw. Okay, and I'll hand that up so everybody can see it, right? It says the word draw. Now, you would all expect then if I take that word draw and I hold up my mirror, right, in front of it, and I look at the reflection of it in my mirror, that the word will be backwards. But that's not because the mirror has flipped the word, it's because I flipped the word. If I'm actually holding up the word draw here so that I can read it, so it looks correct to me now, all y'all who are looking at it in the camera can see that it looks backwards, right? If I flip it around towards the mirror or towards the camera, now, from my point of view, reading it, it appears backwards again, right? But it appears right to you. So the funny thing about mirrors is mirrors don't flip things. We flip things when we look into the mirror or when we turn them to address the mirror. Now, what mirrors actually do, which is even stranger than that, is they do reverse things from back to front, not from left to right. So when you look at yourself in your mirror, and you can hold up your mirror right now and look at yourself in it, you will see that this side of your face remains on that side in the mirror, right? It stays on the same side. What the mirror actually shows you is a view of yourself as if you could look through the back of your own head into your face, right? And in that way, the mirror shows an abstraction, a view of ourselves that no other person ever gets to see of us unless they're also looking at us in a mirror. And that is a strangeness. It's an abstraction of space and an abstraction of ourselves that we get very accustomed to from looking at mirrors from the time that we're babies. And we get so used to it that when we see photographs of ourselves that are not mirrored, we find them very disconcerting, which is why your cell phone has a feature. The front-facing camera on your cell phone actually has a feature where it artificially mirrors your image. So when you're taking a selfie, the digital processor in your phone makes it look like a mirror image so that it feels good to you and you think you look good because it feels like you're looking into a mirror. That's one of the strange things about mirrors. Another strange thing about mirrors is the way they reduce things. Everything that you look at in a mirror, if I look at myself in this mirror right now, my face, my head is exactly half the size of my actual head. Even if you're looking in a bathroom mirror right now or holding that mirror up only 30 centimeters from your face, your head will be reduced to half size. And there's a very, very simple reason for that. The reason is the mirror is always exactly halfway between you and the virtual you that's reflected in the mirror. And because that relationship always remains constant, no matter how close or how far from the mirror you get, that mirror will always be halfway between you and the other you, or you will be twice as far away. Therefore, you will be half size. And you can actually do this. You can do this by looking in your mirror and actually marking out the top and bottom of your head with bits of tape or even hitting it with your marker, and you'll see how small it is. This always surprises my students in class when they think, oh, I'll do a drawing where I'm looking at my mirror reflection and I'll actually trace my reflection on the mirror in a grease marker or something like that. And they're always amazed at how small that drawing gets. In fact, if you want a full-length mirror, for a full-length mirror, all that you need is a mirror that's exactly half the length of your body. And if you hang it up at eye level, you will be able to see your entire body reflected in, of course. And I can go on with these different kinds of examples. The point is, as much as experiences we have with mirrors, people really misunderstand them. And there's been a lot of research into this and a lot of funny experiments you can look up online where they ask people to predict what they will see in a mirror. And you will be amazed at how badly people do at predicting what they'll actually get. There's also a reason why mirrors are used by artists. They're mysterious things. They make images, but they're not quite pictures. They're not real. They exist in the space in between. And that's also why mirrors have long been used in fantasy and fiction, in horror, as portals, right? The idea of the mirror as a gateway to another world, a world that exists alternatively to our own world. We have to only think of Alice through the looking glass, right? All right, so today we're going to get into mirrors. We're going to explore a little bit of the strangeness of mirrors and hopefully get you out of the thinking that mirror likeness means an exact duplicate of yourself or of reality, because as we've just demonstrated, mirrors don't duplicate reality. They distort reality in really, really interesting ways. Okay, now let's go back to L.J. Harvey for a minute and talk a little bit about him, because this is the work we're going to be using today. All right, so if we look here, I've got this wonderful carved mirror by L.J. Harvey, and I'll move over a little bit so you can see the full citation there. You've all been shared the link to this online as well. L.J. Harvey, really, really interesting cat. He was a wood carver, he was a potter. In fact, the Griffith University Art Museum down at the South Bank campus where I teach did a wonderful show at the end of 2018 called With Heart and Hand, Queensland pottery, or art pottery in Queensland up till 1950. And L.J. Harvey was prominently featured in that exhibition, which got a lot of attention. L.J. Harvey also was a teacher at the Brisbane Technical College and Central Technical College in the early 20th century. And that Central Technical College was an outgrowth of an art school started in Brisbane in the mid-19th century, which still continues today as the Queensland College of Art, where I teach. So L.J. Harvey was a teacher at the same institution where I teach today. And all of you who live in Brisbane or in Southeast Queensland, most likely L.J. Harvey started his own school too, at pottery school, and had many, many students. And so if you have family that's been in Brisbane for a long time, or neighbors, parents, grandparents, most likely there's work by L.J. Harvey or his students that's floating around your house. If you know of any, you should put it in the chat. That would be wonderful for us to hear about. This is one of his carved works from the 19-teens, and it's a wonderful mirror, beautiful mirror with this allegorical figures, birds, swags. And then down at the bottom, if you've downloaded it yourself, you can probably see that it has the word honesty carved right below the mirror. And so we're going to use, what is an honest mirror? We could have a conversation about mirror, mirror on the wall as well, but we're going to talk about honesty and mirror images and self-portraiture. And also as a tribute to L.J. Harvey, we're going to do a little wood carving ourselves this morning. All right, so let's switch back now to me here. Okay, And one of the things, and I see in the chat a lot of people are sharing reminiscence about studying in the QCA back in the 80s. It's only been called the Queensland College of Art for a few decades. Some of you might remember the old Seven Hills campus as well. And somebody else is sharing that they had a great aunt that did pottery with L.J. Harvey, Louis Jarvis Harvey too. Okay, so what we're going to start off with today is a little tutorial that I shared with everybody prior to our workshop today too, which is sharpening your pencils and the proper way to sharpen your pencils. I used to say to my design students and art students back in the 1990s that if they ever went into an art studio or a design studio for a job interview or anything like that, and it was filled with pencils that looked like this, I told them, just walk away. You don't want to have anything to do with that. If you walk into an art studio and it has pencils which look like that, then you found your tribe. All right, so what we're going to talk about here is how to do your, how to work with your pencils, how to put different types of points on your pencils. If you don't have these materials with you this morning, don't worry, just watch, follow along. If all that you have is a mechanical pencil sharpener, you'll be fine. I'm going to show you a strategy for using your mechanically sharpened pencils as well. Look, if all you have is a biro pen or some textures, just stick around, you can draw with those too. All right, now the idea here with your pencils, and again, this is a little wood carving tribute to L.J. Harvey here this morning. What we're going to try to do with your pencils is put the most versatile point on your pencil that we can. This type of point that's made with a standard here, I'll hold it up close, of course. Y'all are familiar with this kind of a conical pencil point. That type of pencil point, which is put on by a standard pencil sharpener, whether that's the old crank style standard pencil sharpener or one of these cruel little wedge shaped ones that they buy for kids, and these things are awful. You should just bury these in your yard. But that type of point is what's called a standard point, also sometimes called a perfect point. One of the problems with this type of point and this type of pencil sharpener is it's just grinding away at your pencils. It's taking away as much of a huge amount of your pencil in order to put that really fine point on. The other problem with that is that fine point lasts for a very, very brief amount of time before it dulls, and then you've got to resharpen it again, and you're going to grind through your pencils. And if you're like me, you will get very attached to certain pencils that you draw with, and you don't want to just grind them down to dust. Now, your pencils, for those of you who have a pencil with you right now, I'm going to switch over to the other camera again now. Those of you who have your pencils with you, you will notice that somewhere on your pencil, probably towards the end of your pencil, there will be a code written on it. And that code indicates the hardness of your pencil. Some of you might already be aware of this. So this is one of my kids' pencils bought at Office Works as part of their book list. And it says at the very butt end of the pencil, it says HB, sorry, HB. I've got to get my H's right. It says HB right at the end. This one at the end says 2B. I'll show you another one here. This one at the code at the end says 6B. All of those codes refer to the relative hardness or softness of the pencil. Now, pencils are coded from H to B. H is hard, B is soft. Now, every pencil manufacturer is different. What causes the difference in the hardness, the relative hardness or softness of those pencils is the amount of graphite that's in the core of the pencil relative to the amount of clay. And that's what the core of your pencil is. It's clay mixed with graphite. And that's what creates your pencil. Now, if it's got graphite as a soft form of carbon, very, very soft, in fact, so soft that powdered graphite is used as a lubricant for all you locksmiths out there, you know what I'm talking about. But if it were pure graphite, it would just crumble. It would just fall apart. But when it's mixed with clay, that gives it its hardness and its body. If it's got very little clay in it, it's going to be soft and dark. If it's got a lot of clay mixed in with it, it's going to be hard. Right in the middle, the sort of standard middle pencil is the HB. All right, so that is a middle pencil, but unfortunately there is no international standard for pencils. So one pencil's manufacturer, HB, might be like another pencil manufacturer's 2B or another's 2H. So it really depends on the pencil, which is why different artists will get to different brands of pencils or different types of pencils that they really like a lot. Now, as the numbers go up, it gets either harder or softer. So right here I have for you a pencil I bought in Venice about 20 years ago. And you can see there's still quite a lot of this pencil left. This is the infamous 10H pencil. It is the hardest pencil that you can buy. I think I've sharpened it maybe twice in my life. And it's like drawing with a nail. It barely makes any mark at all because there's so little graphite in it, and it's got a really, really stiff clay. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the 10B, which is the softest pencil. And let me see if I've got a 10B here. I've got a 6B. I've got a 9B. I might not have a 10B right here in my pile, but this is an 8B. So that was the 10H right there. Now this is an 8B, and you'll see the difference there, just how soft and how dark that is. So as you go up in your H's, you're getting harder and harder and harder. As you go up in your B's, you're getting softer and softer. You'll find in most sketch classes, artists will typically say they're using a 4B or a 6B. That's a good soft pencil for doing sketches. This is a 6B pencil right here. All right. So that's what you're, so if you have a pencil, you can look at it right now and you'll get a sense of how hard or soft it is. Now, putting the proper point on your pencil. For those of you who have mechanical pencil sharpeners, and you're going to be sharpening your pencils by just grinding them, or you have an old-fashioned one like that, and you put on a standard point or a perfect point, what I'm going to ask you to do today is practice holding that pencil under your hand like this, rather than holding it upright like this between your fingers. Because if you hold that pencil under your hand like that, when you want to draw straight lines, what you can do is drag that pencil with the long axis of the pencil lead like that. And you'll get a nice fine line. You'll get a nice fine line, but you also won't be grinding away the tip of that pencil. All right. Now, the other thing that you can do if you hold the pencil like that, you can get a nice fine line. The other thing that you can do is then just scrub sideways to get that soft, long edge of the pencil for shading, right, or creating tone. So by just dragging with the long axis or working across, you can get a variety of different line weights there. So I'd like you to practice. If you've only ever used a standard pencil like this before to draw, give that a try today. It's going to feel a bit uncomfortable at first, but I think you'll really, you'll get the hang of it fairly quickly and see the different types of things that you can do. Now, the point that's on this pencil is what's called a chisel point. And that's what I want to demonstrate for you right now, is how to go about creating a chisel point on your pencil. So I'm going to do that by destroying a pencil. For those of you who are playing along at home, what you'll need is just any pencil, doesn't matter. You'll need a craft knife, which could be a Stanley knife, could be an X-Acto knife, could be a pocket knife, whatever it is, and any bit of sandpaper, or anything, even a rough sheet of paper will work for this. The concrete floor of your studio will work for this. They actually sell in art supply stores these little pallets of sandpaper where you can tear off the different pieces of sandpaper. There is no reason to ever buy one of these. This came with one of our student kits once, and I use it for demos, but any bit of small sandpaper will work. Now, the goal, what you're trying to do, and I'll draw this for you so you can see it here on my sheet of paper. What you're trying to do, if you imagine that this is the barrel of your pencil, all right, and there's the wood coming up in the pencil right there. What you're trying to do is expose a cylinder of lead coming out the end of your pencil like that. Right. Once you've exposed that cylinder, and I say lead is the colloquial term for the graphite and clay core of this. Of course, there is no lead in it. That's a reference to old metal points going back 500 years. But once you've exposed that graphite core there, then what you can do is take that cylinder and you give it a few scrubs on your sandpaper, and that will put a chisel point on it. When you have that chisel point, the beauty of this is you can get up on the chisel to get a very, very fine line, or just spin it in your fingers to the flat edge to get a beautiful soft line. So the other nice thing about this is as you're making the soft lines, you're actually sharpening the chisel to get those fine lines again. And so it's a versatile point, which you shouldn't have to sharpen very often at all. You can do a lot of drawings only having sharpened your pencil once, as opposed to using the grinders where you're constantly grinding away. If it does get dull, you just put it back onto your sandpaper and give it a couple of rubs, and you're ready to go again. Okay, so let me take you through how to do this. I'm going to take a pencil right here, and I'm just going to destroy it. Ah, that was satisfying. Just snapped that, that lead right off that pencil. Okay, now the whole key to doing this, and I'm sure for some of you who've tried it, you might have ground through a few pencils there. I made a joke in the little tutorial I put together that if it looks like, you know, raccoons have been chewing on your pencil, that's all right. That will happen at first. Oftentimes, you know, I have students who work on this for weeks and weeks before they get the hang of it. The key is the flick of your wrist. The key is to push the blade straight down into the wood of your pencil. Please always cut away from you and not near anyone else. Be safe. To push the blade straight down into your pencil and then flick it by twisting quickly out so the blade then is parallel to your lead. Now, what you don't want to do is whittle it. You don't want to be sitting there and sort of whittling it in a motion like that because you'll just be cutting into the graphite core. So you're going to push straight down and in and then flick it. And if you're doing that, you should be taking straight chips of wood away that remain parallel to the graphite core. So you shouldn't be grinding into it. And you just keep spinning it. So I'm spinning it with my left hand because I'm right hand dominant. I'm spinning it with my left hand and I'm just pushing straight in and doing that little flick, just chipping it out like that. And that's the key to doing that effectively. And if you do that, sorry, I just knocked my webcam there. If you do that, you should wind up exposing about 8 to 10 mils of that lead. Here, let's switch over to the other camera. I'll show everybody a close-up. Okay, I'll hold that right up in front of the camera. So if you've done it correctly there, you should expose about 8 to 10 mils of that graphite core, and you shouldn't have, hopefully, a whole bunch of teeth marks coming out of your pencil. Okay, let's switch back to the other camera again. And now, if I take that and I take my little bit of sandpaper, I'm going to hold it at about a 45-degree angle, about a 45-degree angle to the sandpaper, and just a couple of quick strokes back and forth. And that will put that beautiful chisel point on that pencil. And now, whether I'm working under my hand like this, or I'm going to show you a technique of drawing where you keep your hand up today, you can work on the flat edge of that chisel for a nice soft mark, or on the sharp edge of that chisel, and you don't have to change your grip. You're just spinning the pencil in your fingers to get a line variety. You can also, in the course of making one line, if you're spinning that pencil, that line will go from soft to hard, from fine to broad again. All right. So now, again, if you're at home right now, madly whittling away at your pencils, it's going to take a bit of practice. Getting that flick of your wrist just right so that you're taking the wood off of the graphite core without chewing into the graphite. That's what you want to get. And then you can go through and you can just meditate and go through and sharpen all of your pencils. Put a nice point onto all of your pencils. All right. Now, let's move on to the very first drawing. Okay, I'm going to get a fresh sheet of paper, and then we're going to begin by drawing the honesty mirror. Okay. All right, I'm just going to switch this here. Lift up my tablet. All right. Nice fresh sheet of paper with minimal pencil shavings on it. All right, there we go. All right, now, what I'm going to have you begin with this morning is to actually use L.J. Harvey's honesty mirror as a framing device. Now, this is a technique I think will be useful for a lot of you, whether you're a more experienced artist or just starting out. One of the most difficult things when you're starting a drawing is dealing with the edges of your paper. I find that students, when they first start drawing, they tend to collapse everything into the center of their paper. They get very, very afraid of the edges of their paper. There's an old adage in drawing that every drawing begins with 4 lines, which are the top, bottom, left, and right edges of your page. And every mark you make is going to relate to those 4 lines, the format that you're drawing on. One of the tricks and techniques I like to use is to have people begin by drawing out a frame and then drawing within that frame. Because if you give yourself that framing device, you're going to be much more sensitive to composition, where you're making those marks and how those marks are relating to those 4 lines. When you're working with just a big blank sheet of paper, I know it can be a little bit intimidating. So what we're going to do this morning is we're actually going to use L.J. Harvey's honesty mirror as a framing device. We're all going to draw the honesty mirror first, and then we're going to place our self-portraits into that honesty mirror. All right, so get your pens or your pencils. If you've got a pencil sharpened right now, that's great. I'm going to use a nice soft pencil. I think I'll probably use an 8B. Actually, no, check that. I'm going to use a 6B pencil, this one right here, so that it's nice and dark and y'all can see it really, really well there on your screens. Now, if you have a good chisel point, and I'm just going to sharpen up my chisel point really quickly, there. Few strokes on my sandpaper. Now, what I want you to practice here this morning is a different grip. For those of you who've done this in previous weeks, drawing this way, or if you have a perfect point pencil and you're drawing that way, that's fine. For those of you who are able to put on a chisel point, I want you to try a technique where you hold your pencil upright, almost perpendicular to your sheet of paper, and then imagine your arm is a plotter. All right, so rather than using your fingers and your wrist, I want you to be working from your shoulder with your whole arm and try to keep your wrist and fingers fairly stiff. That way you'll get more control over long straight lines and long curves. When you drag your palm and work from your fingers and your wrist, you tend to always draw arcs and you tend to always draw in small segments. So whether you're holding straight up and down like that, or whether you're holding under your hand and dragging with the long axis, try to imagine that your hand stays fairly stiff in your wrist, and try to draw from your shoulder rather than drawing with your fingers. All right, so if you can, try that technique where you get up on the edge, and let's begin by doing a quick sketch of the honesty mirror. Now, it doesn't have to be too perfect, right? So give yourself that frame of the honesty mirror, and then let's all of us bring in a little bit of L.J. Harvey's beautiful carving too. So I'm going to start with that frame, and then I'm going to begin to lay it out. Now, at this point, you don't have to overdraw. Keep working with your whole arm like this, quick and loose. Again, don't get wrapped up in working really small details, all right? And let's all do that. Let's take about, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes here to give yourself. That's Thelma at the top in the middle. You don't have to do a lot of detail on her, but you can get some of this beautiful shape. And you see the way I'm just doing this by moving my whole arm like a plotter. I'm not getting in and tickling it like that, all right? I'm getting in and working in big, bold strokes to try to get that overall feel there, okay? And you don't have to overwork it at all, okay? And I want to get the honesty panel right there down at the bottom too. It's got these beautiful little volutes on the side with the birds on them. All right, how's everybody's honesty mirror going? And what you want to have is that nice frame, your mirror frame, right in the center. All right, so keep it quick, keep it loose, really, really gestural, and again, try to get the overall sense of that by moving your hand across rather than getting in and getting into the details. Now, the other thing you can do, now that if you have your chisel point or if you have your perfect point, is you can add a little bit of tone. So by getting then over onto the flat edge, now I'll hold it down at about a 45-degree angle, and getting into the flat edge now, I can add, you know, a bit of tone to that mirror as well, okay, by scrubbing over it, okay? And again, don't be too precious about it at this point. The more loose and gestural it is, the more of your hand will come through, the more beautiful that drawing will be, okay? And we haven't even added your face to it yet. All right, there we go. All right, I'm going to leave everybody to keep going on that for just a minute as I switch back here to my other camera. All right, so keep going on those honesty mirrors, but wrap them up here, and then I'm going to take my mirror out. So you're not really going to be able to see that, but I'm going to be holding up my mirror so I can see myself in it. Then we're going to switch back over to the other camera, and we're going to talk a little bit about the self-portrait. Okay. All right, let's switch it. And I will grab my mirror. Okay, good. Okay, so how has everybody's quick sketch of the honesty mirror come out so far? All right, seeing some good things. All right, good, 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 beautiful. I'm getting mixed results through the chat. All right, looking good, excellent. Then what you want to have in addition to your honesty mirror is your own mirror, your handheld mirror, which you can use too. And we're going to bring in the self-portrait. You can see me there in my mirror. All right, now with the self-portrait, what I would like you to do is use that format again to frame your self-portrait. One of the things that I would like you to try to do now is also think about that mirror image and the strangeness of the mirror image and the way that that image will emerge up and out of that mirror. So what you don't have to do is try to get in there and very, very carefully trace your contours. Contour is that line that denotes an edge, right? Instead, what I would like you to do is start building up inside the mirror with softer tones. So whether you're working with the standard point, if you've mechanically sharpened your pencil, work on the side of that so you're starting to build up with tone and value. Or whether you were able to do the chisel point that we just talked about, get on the blunt edge of that chisel point so that you can start to build up. And what I would like you to do first is try to just start to build up the overall shape of yourself in the mirror. You can do just your face, you can do a standard portrait bust, which is your head and shoulders, or you can do more of your body if you want to. It's up to you. You know, you are the one who's looking in your mirror. You know how much of you can see right now. And what I'd like you to do is, instead of sitting, I'm going to hold my mirror up too. Instead of starting to draw from the edges of yourself and in, what I'd like you to do is start from the inside of yourself and start to fill out almost like a silhouette. So I'm looking at myself here in the mirror. If I can get it just so, there we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get up on the soft side of the pencil, and I'm just going to start to fill in. I'm going to go with kind of a portrait bust, and I'm going to just start to fill in the overall shape of myself. Here, that pencil's not broad enough. There we go. Okay. In a really, really soft shape. So I'm seeing my overall head there, and neck and shoulders. Okay. Now, if you work in one direction with line, that's hatching. If you come back and work against that hatching in another direction, you're cross hatching. So you can cross hatch, or you can fill in with continuous tone. Depends on the pencil or tool that you're using there. All right, I've got shoulder coming off that way and bleeding off the bottom too. Okay, so again, begin by trying to get that overall shape of yourself, that reflection in the mirror. Oftentimes, if you get bogged down in details right away and trying to trace eyes and ears and hair and things, you'll actually get lost. You're better off working deductively, working from the general to the specific. All right, so begin with that. And then once you're starting to build that up, look at yourself and start to look at the pattern of light and dark that's created. And then start to bring in a little bit more pressure and start to emphasize that pattern of light and dark. So again, we're going away from line, and instead I'm starting to see that there's dark on this side of my face and from my glasses and my nose and under my chin. So I'm going to just start to build up that pattern of value, okay, that I see. And the key to making value is the shape of those values. So it's the shape of the darks and the shape of the lights. I've got quite a lot of very dramatic lighting on me here in my studio and under my eyes All right. So you're starting to build up that portrait. And also you're getting one of the wonderful things about mirror reflections is they have this mysterious and ethereal quality to them. So building up the drawing this way in your pencil, you'll get that sense of shadows and mirrors rather than the sense of a photograph. I mean, mirrors are very important to the history of photography, but you'll start to see that figure emerge from the mirror as opposed to imposing a picture directly on the surface of the mirror. All right, so just keep building it up. Again, don't worry too much about detail. All right, not every fold, not every wrinkle, but just starting to get the overall sense of where you are. Now, you can also, at this stage, if you want to, bring in a little background tone, because the background tone can work against the light tones that are in your face or in your body as well. So if you're sitting against a very dark background, you might also, as I am here, I've got this darkness that sits sort of behind me and goes down there too. All right. Okay. So now you've started to build up your overall portrait. Is everybody seeing how that's developing? All right, yes. There's a comment in the comments too about using a kneaded eraser. Kneaded erasers or blending stumps can also be useful for this if you're using a very soft pencil and you want to lay some graphite down and then push and pull that graphite around on the sheet of paper. Natural gum erasers and blending stumps can be quite good for that. All right, are your portraits looking honest thus far? All right, okay. Now, the next step. So you've got in, hopefully by now, an overall value scheme in your honesty mirror. You've also developed a composition, because now that you've been using the honesty mirror as a framing device, you can also see how your portrait is relating to this space and what we call the positive space of the figure and the negative space around the figure, or the figure and the ground. And you begin to see the relationship between those things very clearly. Again, if you can imagine not having that framing device and having a drawing like this just floating in the middle of a large sheet of paper, you can see how you would lose that relationship. And it's not to say that every drawing needs to have a framing device, but it can be a really good tool for you to use when you're learning, or when you're starting out, or even when you're just reskilling to use that kind of thing. All right, so now at this stage, what I'm going to ask you all to do, because I know we're going to run out of time here in a few minutes as well, is try to pick out some detail. And I appreciate everyone who gave me such kudos on the chat here this morning about the little interview I did on ABC Radio this morning. But the presenter on the radio program asked me what I thought the key to creativity was, and I said, well, look, I honestly do believe this, that the key to creativity is idiosyncrasy. It's those small details that make each of us unique. And what I would like you to do now in this drawing is pick out one thing that you would like to emphasize, right? Pick out some detail of yourself that you see in the mirror. So it could be a physical detail. It could be the earrings that you're wearing, the glasses that you're wearing. It could be the shape of your nose or the shape of your lips. It could be something even that's happening in the background around you. It could be something that you want to emphasize in the drawing. It could be the clothing that you're wearing. Pick out some small detail. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring emphasis to that small detail by now flipping our pencil to the sharp edge, right? So if you're working with your perfect point, getting up on the sharp edge. If you're working with your chisel point, which should now be very, very sharp because you've done all that beautiful shading in. And let's bring in some sort of really particular detail to your portrait. So for me, because I'm wearing my huge glasses here today, I'm going to take my glasses as that little detail, and I'm going to get up on the edge of my pencil now, but I'm not going to get in and start palm dragging again and drawing with my fingers. I'm going to stay up away from the page with my hand lifted. I'm going to keep it nice and loose, but I'm going to get up on that edge of the pencil, and I'm going to bring in that detail now just to pop it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to hit there my oversized glasses and bridge. All right, like that. Okay. So I want everybody to choose some small detail and just have fun with bringing emphasis to that small detail. And now what that detail might also highlight for you is that you want to bring in a little bit more value. So when I bring in that detail, I see, okay, now I want to bring in a little bit more value under my nose and coming down my jaw as well to play off of my glasses there. And so some small detail that's just idiosyncratic and peculiar and very, very particular to you, and bring that small detail in relative to the overall honesty mirror. Okay, let's take about 2 minutes and pull that small detail in. And while you're pulling that small detail in, I'll just talk a little bit more over you about mirrors. I really do encourage everybody to do a bit of an investigation if this subject interests you. There are so many artists who have dealt with mirrors in recent years, and those works where they're really playing with our connection to virtual worlds, virtual reality, but also the whole idea of surrogacy and doubling, avatars, surveillance, you know, all of these contemporary issues in art and in society, frankly, are things that artists have explored through the use of mirrors in really, really interesting ways. So I recommend, if you have time, just do a little dive into it, but also do a little dive into the physics of mirrors. There are still things, I've spent a lot of time investigating mirrors, and there's still things about mirrors I don't understand. One of the things I understand least about mirrors is eye contact. I don't understand how you can make eye contact with somebody in a mirror, but you can. I remember riding the subways in New York when I was growing up, and you could be sitting 20 meters away from somebody else at the other end of the subway car, and as you're going through the tunnels, all the black glass would become like mirror, and you can make eye contact by looking into the reflection, which is something you're never supposed to do on the subway. You can make eye contact just by looking into the reflection of somebody else in the mirror that far away. And it always confused me at how you can make eye contact when you're looking at different points in space and not actually even looking at the person that you're making eye contact with. All right, there we go. All right, I already see that it's 11:25. Okay, I'm gonna switch it over here to my other camera. Beautiful. How did all of those go? I'm seeing some really, really good some good comments. Now, I know that we covered some technical information today, so I just want to go back and review it again. A couple of points. One of those points that we started with is the nature of mirrors themselves and the vision of you that you see in a mirror when you're drawing. Don't ever take for granted that that mirror is honest, right? That mirror is showing you reality. One of the things I love about the L.J. Harvey mirror and having honesty written below it is the irony of that, right? And I also think about the narrative quality of mirrors, the fantasy of mirrors, how wonderful they are, and then we mix to that the technical aspects of pencil drawing. And pencils are far more complex objects and tools than people think they are as well. So not only do you have the varying hardness and softness of pencils, but the way that you hold a pencil, the way that you sharpen a pencil, the way that you apply that pencil, the way that you move your arm and your body when you're drawing with that pencil, all of those things have profound impacts on the way that the drawing comes across. Unfortunately, we typically, from the time we're very young, get accustomed to sharpening a pencil one way and then holding that pencil one way and using only HB or number two pencils for our entire lives. And so I hope after this workshop, you really become sensitive to pencils, think about them, try some different pencils, try some different points, experiment with your sandpaper and your knife and making your own points too, and how you use them. I'm really, really excited to see all of your drawings today. Please share them with us. I'm going to kick it back to Hannah in just a minute, who's going to remind you of the way that you can share. Please tag Home with Qagoma on your social media. Please tag me as well. I've been responding to everybody who's been tagging me and putting the stuff up that I've been able to see. It's really been wonderful, and I'm really sad to say we only have one more of these. Next week, next Saturday is going to be the last in our draw along series, but it's going to be really, really wonderful. I hope all of y'all can join us because we're going to go on to motion drawing. We're going to do a completely different type of drawing where we're going to deal with making drawings, collage, puppets, animation. It's going to be quite a lot of fun. So thank you again. My name's Bill. Thank you for joining me again here this morning in my studio. I'm going to throw it back over to Hannah, and I hope to see all y'all next week. All right. Bye-bye.